For the longest time, employers across New Zealand were able to stop an employee from discussing their pay. With the right clauses in their employment agreements, pay secrecy was a thing. Now we're shifting and it's moving in a different direction. With the introduction of the Employment Relations Employee Remuneration Disclosure Amendment Bill, yes, it's a mouthful, employers are now having to face the fact that they can't ban pay discussions anymore. What does that mean for you and your workplace? If you're wondering and you're not ready or you're not prepared, or maybe you just want to know if you've checked everything off correctly, then guess what? This episode is just for you. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lawlands. My name is Sanam and thank you so much for tuning in to the Employment Law Done Right podcast. Hello. How are you all doing? How is everyone going? For all of you that came to the HRHQ live conference, how are you doing? It's been almost 3 weeks since the conference. The dust is settling. Were you buzzing with the connections, the growth that you felt that day? I know that everything in that room was electric. I felt really good coming in and speaking to you all, and I was so glad to be your MC, just to be able to connect with each and every one of you. It was fantastic. And to everyone that actually took out their time to come over and speak to little old me, thank you so much for coming over and taking out your time. It was amazing to connect with you and to know that there are people out there that follow the podcast, which was mind-blowing. I always find it mind-boggling when people say, hey, it's great following the podcast, or thank you so much for the newsletter. So thank you. Thank you for making what I do actually relevant and it means something to the world. I did hear as a general consensus from everyone that what you're looking for is just more practical information out there. And yes, while we have so much information, it's information overload. You're just death by information out there when it comes to employment law. There just isn't much when it comes to the actual implementation and doing this so that you can take proactive steps in your business. So I hear you, and I will be introducing and releasing some information so that I can get a better understanding and a gauge of what you are looking for, and so that you can see kind of what's been happening on the Lawlands front. I know that I've gone to ground again for a couple of weeks, and that's because it was my birthday. And then we also had the conference the week before. And in and amongst all of that, I decided it would be a great idea for all of the family to fly into Auckland. When it came to immediate family, they flew in to talk about the wedding. It's funny how that happens. It's funny how everybody gets so involved in the wedding planning, but that's okay. We are wrapping our heads around this and we are working through it. I do believe what I see on TikTok is that this tends to be one of the more stressful times. But then again, I still meet the occasional bride that says, wow, it was just great. I loved planning my wedding. If you are one of those people that genuinely loved planning their wedding, then kudos to you. You have braved and not suffered during the process, but hopefully my suffering will end in a lot of happiness. So I've heard on the actual big day, it all dissipates, doesn't it? I hope. Please. Okay. Well, we are talking about a bill that has been kicking around for a long time, and now it is looking like it will be making its way into law. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, or just before the conference, there was a little bit of a media uptick that we saw around this particular bill. As part of my day job, I did speak about how businesses can prepare, and that got picked up by quite a few news outlets, which means, and which indicates to me and signals to me that you are probably wanting to know what you need to do as a business to prepare for pay secrecy and pay transparency. What am I talking about? Well, we are back when it comes to the Employee Remuneration Disclosure Bill. It is a massive name for this bill. I'm just going to call it the Pay Secrecy Bill, and hopefully we can keep moving it along like that. But yes, we are back again, and I say that because last year I actually did an episode where I included this particular bill, and at the time I actually thought after National came in, or the coalition government, there wasn't going to be much interest around this, but everybody is on board except for a couple of parties here and there. So what does that mean when most of the MPs and parties are on board? That means that the bill will most likely get passed. That is what we're looking at today. We are looking at a bill that is making its way through. It is past a select committee when the MPs are weighing in, and most likely, just based on the feedback from all the different parties, the coalition government, and everybody that's been giving their 2 cents, it seems like this bill will most likely pass. And that made me think, wow, okay, so that means people are are actually interested and maybe they're not necessarily prepared for this. So I thought, why not straight to your fingertips, give you guys some insights and tips that you can take so that you can walk away from this feeling a lot better, knowing that you can start getting prepared now rather than when this bill becomes law. So what is the purpose of this bill and what is going on? Now, before we get into it, I just wanted to say, make sure that you are following the podcast. I know that there are lots of you listening that are not following the podcast, so please make sure that you hit that follow button. That means that you will always get these episodes straight to your phones and you won't have to worry about when they're coming out because, sometimes I drop the ball. Anyways, back into it. What's the purpose of the bill? It's very important to understand the why behind these bills and these pieces of legislation. And this specific one is all about pay transparency. We are talking about a bill that is helping let employees talk about their pay, protecting employees from being punished when they do, and supporting fairer workplaces by making it easier to identify unjustified pay gaps. So this was all brought in March 2024. So it's been kicking around for a while. It impacts all employees across New Zealand and all employers will be impacted by this regardless of your industry, regardless of the size of your company. It actually passed its way through its second reading last month and it's currently sitting in its third reading and you can see it on the horizon and that's where it's headed next. So the question always is, what is actually changing? Why does it matter to me, Sanam? Why do I need to care? If it gets passed into law, which like I said, most likely it will, the bill actually makes pay secrecy clauses unenforceable. So sometimes in your employment agreements, and a lot of employers don't do this, you see this maybe with larger corporates or other companies where there's a lot of chatter about pay and employers are trying to restrict that. In those companies, you'll see clauses that might be hidden kind of in plain sight. So you might see them buried under a remuneration clause, but most likely under your confidentiality clauses. So there'll actually be something in there that might be a throwaway line that says that the employee can't discuss their pay or their remuneration with anyone else, and that's considered confidential information. What this new piece of legislation will actually do is add a new personal grievance ground for employees. If employees face negative consequences because they've discussed their pay, they can actually raise a personal grievance for that. What are negative consequences, right? It's a little bit hard to gauge that when it's so broad. The legislation defines adverse conduct to include things like being dismissed. It could be denying the employee equal conditions or opportunities, maybe being subjected to detriment, and also being forced to resign. All of the ones I've listed, it could also be that the employee has been threatened with any of the above. So it covers more than just salary. We're talking about bonuses, allowances, commission, superannuation, and other payments for work as well. This is going to go beyond just your salary base rate. It is about all the extra bits and bobs that they're getting as well. Keep that in mind. Commissions, allowances, bonuses. A lot of times employers try to keep this quiet and separate, but this is going to be a time when employees will be able to discuss this and you can't stop them from doing that. Now, the question is, how do you prepare? Look, employers, the best thing that you can do is start looking at everything now. I would highly recommend this for anyone that is in HR, that is an employer, that is a business owner. It is your time now to get ahead of the bill before it becomes law. And the first thing that you can do is audit your pay structures. So find the discrepancies that exist and know why they exist. You need to have a very clear why, because that is what's going to happen. A lot of employees, once they start chattering, they're going to probably approach you and say, hey, why is such and such getting $26 an hour and I'm only getting $25 an hour? What's the situation there? Fix anything that doesn't add up. It's also a great time for you to just audit your pay structures in general. Like I said, another area to have a look at would be your clauses in your employment agreement. Review the employment agreement. Check if there's any mention of pay secrecy or not discussing pay. Command or Control F and find the words that you need to find and make sure you just go over it with the fine-tooth comb. The last thing you want is to leave a clause in there that you shouldn't have, especially when the law comes into place. And get your story straight. Be ready to explain how pay is set. Make sure that you've based it off of something. Maybe it's market data, maybe it's performance, maybe it's tenure. Spell it out so that you are ready and prepared. Remember, this is about your why, and you need to make sure that you've got your comms plans ready. This is something that falls a bit beyond what an employment lawyer would tell you to do. Comms plans are critical in anything that you do, whether it's a restructure, whether it's a disciplinary and you're working with the manager. You need to communicate the process that you're doing. Here, you're going to have employees approaching you, coming up to you and saying, hey, such and such is getting this much, I'm getting this much, what's going on? Do you not value me? All of these things. Be ready to go. It's important to train your managers. They're your front line. They need to know how they need to have these conversations and what they need to do. For all of those small employers out there, I get it. It's going to be hard to do this. If you've got a small cafe and your barista is your head chef, who is also the person that's managing, then just have a chat with them and say, look, this is something that's going to come into place. You're probably going to get a few employees pushing back and asking questions. Just know that this is what you need to say, or you can just defer them to you, for example, and then they'll come to the business owner, managing director instead. With the larger companies, you can actually train your teams, train your managers, make sure that you get ahead of it, put together a one-pager, HR team out there, put something together so that they are prepared and they're not making any promises and weird and wacky things that can come up in conversation. We know what can happen. Sometimes managers, I understand you get backed into a corner, you don't know what to do, so you sometimes agree to things that maybe the business wouldn't necessarily agree to. So I would say in those scenarios, just make sure that you've trained your managers. The last thing that I wanted to have a look at before I summed up, I wanted to make this a quick, short, snappy episode, trust me, is the pros and cons of this piece of legislation. I try not to give my 2 cents on everything, but I wanted to have a look at the pros and cons so that you can have a balanced approach and have a look at both sides. The pros here are that it aligns New Zealand with global practices. We've got best practice around a lot of different countries, Australia, the UK. They've all implemented this kind of pay secrecy clause ban, and it also empowers employees. It builds trust. It helps reduce pay inequality, and that's the main focus, is pay transparency. A lot of times, pay transparency and banning these kinds of clauses can actually lead to a boost in retention if everything is handled well. Now, on the other side though, the cons is that it could cause short-term tension in teams. It could lead to more discrimination or pay equity claims. So a lot of the parties that don't agree, like the Māori party, are saying that, look, that is a huge issue that can come out of this. We can see a lot more discrimination claims coming through because of this particular situation. And then the other issue is the risk of salary information being used competitively. Just keep that in mind. And then also another con is it could expose inconsistent pay decisions that employers aren't ready to explain. There could be some reason in your workplace why there is a pay gap that exists, and there's just no explanation behind it other than that is what the employer wants to pay. And maybe the employer doesn't want to explain that yet. Maybe this person is transitioning into another role. You just don't want to have those conversations. So it isn't just a legal shift. Keep in mind it's a cultural one. It's about morale in your workplace. Transparency ultimately will take effort, and it will be a little bit of pushback that you're going to receive once people start talking. Now, I'm not going to say the day the law passes, the floodgates will open and everyone will start talking about it. Gradually, these things will come up in your workplace. So as a final thought, keep in mind this is still a bill. It's making its way through. It's passing. It's at the third reading before it becomes law. So not law yet, but you can still prepare. And that means by preparing, you're going to be looking at those clauses, making sure that you've got your comms plans ready. If you've got employment agreements with these clauses buried in them, then make sure that you've got them on your radar so that you're ready to go. Make sure that you're staying ahead, and the fact that you're here listening to this episode makes me think that you are. And if you want to make sure that you get some bite-sized content without all the fluff and the extra legal jargon, then this is the podcast for you. So make sure that you follow the Law Lens podcast. And that is it from me, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you are having a wonderful day, night, evening, morning, whatever it may be. And I'll catch you in the next one, everyone.